Well, yesterday it rained all day, or most of the day, and I was gonna clean up this chopper, get the corn head off, get everything blown out, and get the hay head back on. I kind of more or less like to get it ready for next year. So when I put this thing away next spring, I pretty much just gotta hook it up, make sure my tractor is ready. But there's way too many things to do when you start getting close to haymaking time in the spring. So that's how I like to stay ahead of things. I mean, same with the baler. Just like to get it so that if there's anything that needs maintenance, I take care of it. And then yesterday, so instead of cleaning up the chopper, I cleaned up the 7510. And this tractor, I bought brand new. Well, it was a lease return. This is an 02, and I bought it in 03 with 500 hours on. It still had a year's warranty on, so it's pretty much a new tractor. This thing was probably the dirtiest it's ever been since I owned it. And not so much mud and manure as it was oil, because what happened here, there's an oil line like right here. This is like the main line from the pump that goes into all of my auxiliaries. And there's an O-ring in there. And I don't know why, but it blew it out. I suppose just from age or something eventually. So there's oil leaking down through everything. And you know, dust likes to stick to oil. And then I replaced it with an O-ring, but then a week later it went again. And then I went to John Deere to get the original O-ring. And it seemed to take a while to find somebody that actually get me the right one, but now it's been holding up pretty good. And then the last hay I cut, we had a leak in the hose for the disc bind. And so then when I would use the hydraulics, you'd get this, like right about in here where that leak was, a mist of oil would shoot up into the air, and everything back here got oil on it. Just you know, a mist after cutting for a few hours, and then the dust, you know, the dust likes to stick to oil. So it didn't really hurt anything, but it just made everything look nasty. The back window and everything. Until you actually really scrub it down, you never, even though you wipe it off, the oil never really quite goes away. So anyway, I kind of went through here, and then I changed the oil in the motor, changed the fuel filter, changed the transmission filter. My hydraulic filter, I just changed, I think, like last fall. So I think that was pretty good. Checked the air filter up front, 4,300 hours on here, which really isn't a lot. These things for its age, but we're splitting up the hours between all three of the John Deeres and some of the other tractors. So everything kind of got scrubbed up, so makes the guy feel pretty good. These tractors are gaining value every day, and we want to take care of them. So I'm going to get this one out of the way. I got to get the 7810 out and start working on that chopper. Get that all cleaned up, and then here where the baler is, I'm gonna back that chopper in there, back that baler in there. We kind of interlock those machines in there so they don't take as much space up over winter, so that we have room in here for other things in the fall yet. So all we have left to do for harvest is we got just a few acres of corn. I'm waiting for a combine. It's still a little wet yet for that. And then corn stalk bedding, we're gonna try shred that down, bale most of it, maybe do some direct with a flail chopper, make a pile. Yeah, and then maybe a little bit of tillage where we didn't put cover crop and stuff. And that picker, I will not take that picker off until my corn is all harvested, just in case something with the combine doesn't work out. We may have to figure out something, but we're feeding it up too, so we may make room that way eventually. But we'll get her done, and it'll be a good feeling to put all this harvest machinery away and start just thinking about winter and feeding cattle and hauling manure and not worrying about crops. So what I did is I took a standard pallet and I kind of extended it. I put 2 or 3 2x4s longer through it, so I actually gave it a couple more feet so it fits on this pallet better, because it seems like if I would just use the standard pallet, they would just fall apart because I couldn't reach under them right. It wasn't on there all the way right. But this, I just beefed it up a little bit. I've done that for my duals too. Kind of enforced a pallet so it can support it better. Family of mice already moved in. This thing's only been sitting here a couple weeks. A little bit of corn in here, so they must find their way in here. Done this a few times already, probably about 5-6 times. But getting this out of here is a whole lot easier than putting it in. We don't necessarily have to line anything up. And then that filler that you put in here, well, that's a little more forgiving. Not much room to get this one out. Guess it wouldn't be farming if we didn't have to struggle with something at least once a day. Well, he's not in such a fun place neither. We're gonna get this hooked up to the Bobcat, see if we can yank this processor out of here. And then what I need to do is take her up by the milk house with the pressure washer and get everything pressure washed out. And after it dries off, we put oil on these. Spin it a little bit, let it wick into it. It's got a stand it goes in. If you watched preparing the chopper for corn silage, you watched how we put this in here. It's a little bit more of a fight. It's a big, kind of a clumsy thing, but so somebody asked if I made the stand for this. I mean, that comes with the processor. And I don't know for sure, but I remember back, it could be over 10 to 15 years ago when we were pricing these. They were like 10 grand. You know, it's kind of crazy money. I don't know what these things are made out of. It doesn't seem like there's all that much to it. But there must be something. And you get some pretty heavy bearings there and stuff, but must be the milling or something. Otherwise, it's just kind of standard iron. But anyway, that's the processor, and this is the ramp. That's got to go in when the processor goes in, so we're going to stick that in here. And then what we're going to do once this dries off a little bit, I'm going to pour a little waste oil on it, just to keep it all nice, and we'll hang those belts near it, and they have it. And it's on wheels, so in the shop here, when you're moving equipment around afterwards, you can push it out of your way. You don't have to come back with the Bobcat because it's heavy. All right, so that's that. Then we're gonna have to get at the rest of this thing, which is quite a job ahead of us yet. It's the next day. Got kind of late yesterday. I had to get at chores and things, and I washed this with the pressure washer, and it seems to shine up real nice. I can see every little thing that might need attention, if it does. It's kind of neat to get some of that old grease dust off and start fresh again. And it's later October. Usually I get this thing cleaned up as soon as I'm done with corn silage, which is usually about the 20th of September already. I got this all put away, but so we're later October this year, but this video may not come out for a bit yet. I mean, we're just trying to put some stuff together when we got a chance. But somebody asked about sharpening. I'll be doing that too. What I got to do today now is I got to put that in this hole here. And there's various bolts to put in and get that all snugged up in there. Probably grease everything. And what I like to do is put grease in all the zerks after I washed it like that. So it kind of pushes the water out of everything. You know, there's water that gets in the bearings from all that pressure washing and stuff. I don't know, I usually don't oil the chains until spring, but I could. I mean, we even put oil in the, I dumped some waste oil down in the cutter head, the last thing I do. And maybe a little bit in the blower. And then I start it up and run it just a little bit. And then that oil wicks up into everything over winter. I mean, it's just good for it. Because this machine, you can already see the, you know, the acids from the corn and stuff are starting to wear on it a little bit. And I think if you've left it all the time, I mean, even like down in here, this would eventually rust through, I think, if you never cleaned this up. You know, it's mechanically, everything would probably still be good, but you know, then you're patching holes, and they don't build these choppers anymore. It seems like we spend more time preparing this machine and then cleaning it up afterwards than we do actually using it. It can get like that or seem like that, but the other option is to get somebody custom to do it for us, and those things aren't cheap nowadays. And then getting it done when you need it done and getting it done the way you need it done is sometimes probably almost lucky if it ever happens like that. And then you got to pay that bill, you know, or work for that too. So you're, either way, you're working for it. And I would rather do this. This doesn't cost me nothing. It's time. And I don't mind it. I kind of feel like it's, I mean, somebody's got to do it eventually. Otherwise, yeah, you have to find money somewhere else to pay for it. Someone else to be maintaining their machine so they can do your corn or silage or whatever. Now, I don't even remember doing this, but I think what my thoughts were is this is all the washers and flat washers and lock washers that go to the bolts that go in here. In the processor, there's some holes you can't use simply because some of the mechanics of the processor are in the way. So we end up with some extra bolts that we got to keep track of. And those kind of things always seem to save you time and money. Just save you. If you're always kind of staying ahead of things. Explain how this machine actually works for those of you that aren't familiar with this. So this would be, you could call it a field chopper. I mean, where you have to cut the crop first and let it dry and put it in windrows, or if it's hay, otherwise corn. It depends on the head. So you got these arms here with these rollers on, and they go up and down with this cylinder here, which activates this arm and turns this pipe and lifts so that adjusts your head up and down. So for hay, for instance, when you're not actually trying to pick up hay, you'd lift it, like when you turn around in a field or come down the road, and then you put it back down, and it's got adjustable wheels on it so you get your height. And then these are what they call the feed rolls, and I believe there's 4 of them. So you got these 2, and I think they're stainless steel because of this metal detector. If there's any kind of metal that would be magnetized, it would activate this, and then these feed rolls would stop with this clutch right here. You got 2 rolls on the inside. One would be in there, and one's in here. They're a little smaller. So basically you're sandwiching your crop between 4 rolls. And I can see the cutter here. Like right here, that's the cutter already. And then what you have is a shear bar. This bar right here goes all the way through, and I suppose this looks like it's roughly 16 or 18 inches wide here. And then the bar comes out over here. And there's adjustments on that. So every time you sharpen your knives, you have to reset your shear bar. which is between this bolt and that bolt. And that pushes the shear bar up closer to the knives. You want it to just that it touches it to not touching it. There's kind of a real fine line there. But this is a replacement part, just like your knives. And then of course right here they got a little description of how to set your shear bar. And then this mechanism on top here with this whole device, and then here, and then there, that's your stone for sharpening. So here you got your knives. And there's 8 knives in here, and they're kind of at a slant. They're kind of almost twisted a little bit. So this is quite a deal to put in here. So you have them all set the same, of course, and then you have them sharpened the same. So, and then they have slots under these bolts so you can actually push them up after they're sharpened back quite a ways. And these are probably ready to get replaced again. These might even be original. I don't know. I bought this machine like 5 years ago from a guy, so I'm not sure. He only had it 5 years, or he only used it 5 years, and he started getting custom guys. But so anyway, that's how that works. And then of course, this tunnel that we just put in. So there's your knives again. Get a really good look at those now that they're clean. There's, like I said, 8 of them. So when the feet goes through those knives, it tosses it into this auger, and this auger takes it over to this blower, and there's paddles in there, and blows it up this spout. And then you got a deflector right there that you can adjust like this in order to get it into your wagon or whatever you're trying to blow it into. There's a little motor up in here that operates this cable, which let's see how that flips. And that works from the cab. And then you have this big gear on here. There's another one underneath this box that spins the whole spout. So it turns the whole spout. So if you were like going around a corner, especially with hay, it seems like we're moving that all the time in these crooked fields. So it gets to be quite a bit to that, and all those components kind of work. And then of course you got your inoculant, and there's a small motor on there too, which you can set your speed in the cab for how much you want to put on. And it all depends on how much crop is going in. So when the crop's not going in, you shut it off. Or if there's going to be a smaller windrow or lighter corn, or you're moving slower, you got to turn it down. So you put the right amount on. Otherwise you're wasting it usually. And then for sharpening, this is kind of interesting, a little different than the other one was. There's 2 shafts here. And this is the drive line for the tractor. This is what we call 1,000 RPM, which is revolutions per minute. So it's either 540 revolutions, which is on your standard shafts, and then that's more your older stuff. And then the bigger, newer stuff is 1,000 revolutions per minute. So anyway, you take this off and put it on there, which reverses the cutter head. So the cutter head runs backwards, and in order to run your sharpener across it. And then what I'll do is be pulling this, and that stone right here, as these knives are flying through here, will be touching that stone, and that keeps everything nice and even. When I bring that all the way across, this little thing on top will come in contact with this lever right here, and it'll turn it like I'm gonna guess 1/8 of a turn maybe, every time I pull it all the way to this end. And that brings your stone down just a fraction of an inch more, ever so slowly bringing your stone down. And you could probably sharpen your knives like, I don't know, I'm gonna take a shot at it 20, 30, maybe 40 times with this stone, depending on how beat up your knives get. You got a lot of rocks and debris going through that's not really natural. Hay is usually harder on it than corn. Corn is like an oil, like a grease. But we'll sharpen these up after we grease it. Yeah, now we're reversed. And then here are the hookups. This here is for my lights. And that's if you're going to be on the highway places. Seems like everything's coming with all that kind of stuff today. This here cord, this is for the inoculant. And then this big cable here There's a big connection right there. I usually like to take it off when I'm done chopping and take it completely out of the chopper or the tractor. I don't like to leave it up in there. I put it in the cabinet, otherwise it just gets dusty and beat up. But yeah, that'll be your forward, reverse, your metal detect. It'll be some different stuff up on that box. And then you got 2 sets of auxiliaries here. And this tractor is equipped for 3. So we use the top and the bottom one. And one is to raise your head up and down. And the other one is this here cylinder, which is attached to your pole and attached to the frame. And that's to widen your machine out when you get to the field or narrow it back up. And then sometimes even when you get close to fences or other crops, you can adjust that a little bit so you're not like driving on a wind. Like the first round, you might be able to adjust it so you don't actually drive on your windrow, or you can center your tractor real nice. That's a very nice feature as far as the old ones used to have a pull rope and a pin. There used to be a selection of holes in here where but then it was only when your tractor had 1 set of hydraulics. Now we got 2 or 3 on most of our stuff. Put it back to the forward position on the PTO, and now we are gonna set the shear bar, and I'll be listening for that tick. So you got this bolt and that bolt, and that bolt adjusts this side. This bolt turns this shaft, which goes to the other side and adjusts the other side. So all you're doing is pulling this bar up ever so slightly into that cutter head. Now what we gotta do is we gotta run the chopper idling, and then we'll have to listen for that. So really what it is, it's just kind of like a scissors. If you get too big of a gap, you just end up dulling things faster. Or if it's too close, it's dinging up your knives and ruining your shear bar. So there's a fine line there too. And then what it is that your tractor won't need to use nearly the horsepower to chop your hay or silages. And everything lasts longer. I mean, it's just less stress on the machine. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna lube up our chains, and we're gonna throw that waste oil in there and down in that cutter head and into that blower and run it a little bit. Okay, we got kind of an oily mess going here, but I dumped a bunch in here. I'm going to turn this thing on.
of these guys get in between here. Check that other side. It looks like he's in there. See, and then there's slots in these for that fits several different models. This head. This is a 7-foot hay head. Right here, put that bolt through the whole beast. There's two tighteners. There's one there, then there's one over here. Spring loaded, so there's no need for any adjustments. I like that. Very simple design, a very easy design. So then all we use is a couple of bolts that keep in the toolbox, and then we're going to raise it up, and then we can't forget to take him out. I guess he's already loose. And then we got to put him in over here to hold the head up. So we're going to raise our head up, and that's pretty much it, getting this chopper all ready for, well, when we need it again next year. So we got to get this thing on hook. We got to take this off the drawbar. Now right now this drawbar is set for 1,000 PTO. So this shaft, that shaft inside the tractor, that can be, there's a snap ring that can be pulled out, flipped around the 540. It's a really simple design. When you have 1,000 PTO, usually they recommend 16 inches from the end of the drive line to the hitch pin. And then according to this machine right here, it says 20 inches. Now my drawbar doesn't come out to 20 inches to give that, so I had to have my local welder make this. Which these two bolts go in, so the drawbar only ends over here someplace. It gives me an extra 2 inches, lines up at this mark on the drive line with the hitch pin. And what that does is when you're turning, this knuckle and this knuckle are angled the same. So pretty much the bigger distance between the swivel and the end of the PTO line, the better results you have with your drive line. I mean, there's different ways they can do this, but it's too bad my drawbar isn't longer, that I could just pull it out that far and not have to have this piece added in. But it's real simple to put in, just 2 bolts and double nutted under there. So, you know, things like that, I kind of make a simple machine a little more complex, but you gotta have it, and seems like we're getting good results.